All right. Good evening. Yeah. Or good morning. It's after 12. Midnight. 12 midnight. I'm in the shack. Kind of tired. So if you sense that, my apologies. Please forgive me. But I felt I had to address this because, like I said before, I'm treating things as they present themselves. This afternoon, I watched a concert video. Great band, one of my favorite bands, Accept. They're a German band. Wolf Hoffmann is one of my heroes. He is absolutely one of my guitar heroes. Now, am I looking at the right place? Where's the... No, it's not over there. It's over here. It's right there. Yeah, okay. Wasn't sure I was looking in the right place. It's a big tablet. And I have a tendency to look at the screen. Anyway, I watched this concert video called Live and Restless, and it was Accept. Now, Accept has grown by leaps and bounds since they got rid of their original lead singer, Udo Dirkschneider. Now, I'm bringing this up because I actually been thinking since the last video that I kind of wanted to talk about Freud and the ego and the superego and the id. I figured out why they originally called Sigmund Freud a quack. They called him a quack because he was right about a few things. Well, let me tell you the story, okay? And this is really weird because it's really weird how things are kind of lining up and clicking for me right now. I discovered Queensryche and Accept on the very same day. I'd never heard of either band. I had gone out of my way up to Fletcher Avenue to Vinyl Fever when it was up there, not on Henderson, but it was up on Fletcher. So I kind of had to go out of my way because I was a young man. And, when you're a young man, you basically drive back and forth to work and, you really just don't go places, That's something reserved for when you get a little older and, you're like, well, when I was upset, I used to drive all the way to the Brooksville exit and, and then back home from South Tampa. But I went to Vinyl Fever. I walked straight to the counter, and I told the guy, dude, I need some new metal. What have you got that I've never heard? He gave me Accept, Breaker, like their second album, I think, and Queensryche, their EP. I don't know if it even had a title, but it had Last Queen of the Reich on it. It was only 4 songs. It was a cassette and it had the same 4 songs on both sides. Well, turned out I ended up loving both of these bands. I have their whole bodies of work. All of them. Queensryche did some good stuff with Jeff Tate. Now, I want to talk about ego because both of these bands went through the same kind of situation. They had a lead singer that had a huge ego. Queensryche had to fire Jeff Tate because Jeff Tate spit in Michael Wilton's face because they were getting poor management because Jeff Tate had figured he was the best there is. And basically his family had kind of taken over management and the fan club. And they were overlords. And I really shouldn't say anything about this stuff because it's all hearsay. It's just from articles I read and, the way I feel about the bands personally and how a lot of their music and a lot of their lyrics has actually touched me and influenced me. And it's kind of funny, that one of those bands is Accept, just the word Accept, because right now, at this moment in time, I'm accepting a lot of things. A lot of good things. But both bands had singers with huge egos. Both bands had a lead singer that wanted to keep the name of the band. One guy wanted to keep the name of the whole band. Never mind the guitarist and the bass player and the drummer, and the other guitarist. And, it's, they were heavy metal bands. Yeah, heavy metal bands had two guitarists. That's why I like it, I guess, because I love the guitar. Both bands had an egotistical lead singer that wanted to keep the name of the band. Jeff Tate and the rest of the band. Queensryche was Michael Wilton's band. Michael Wilton formed the band. They were lucky enough to have Chris DeGarmo. Guy was a musical genius, and some of the best songs that have ever been played on the air and been heard by people's ears were actually DeGarmo-Tate songs. They wrote them together. They brought out the best in each other as far as lyrics. And I think I don't really know that much about the songwriting process of Accept. But, I don't even know if Udo even wrote songs, but I kind of assumed that, it was Udo and Wolf that wrote songs together. But these guys wanted to keep the names of their bands. Never mind the other guys, the other creative influences of the music. Wasn't right. I'm glad both bands won. Queensryche is doing some of the best music they've ever done with their new lead singer. I got to go see them in Ybor City, at the Cuban Club, I think. Outdoor stage. They were awesome. Awesome. And their new stuff is amazing. They've got a great lead singer. And I've seen Queensryche 3 times. Anyway, I've seen them several times with Jeff Tate, and they were amazing. I got to see the sequel to Operation Mindcrime tour, where Operation Mindcrime 2, and it was amazing because they did the entire Operation Mindcrime album first, and then they did the second album, and then there was a little break in between. Well, I was lucky enough to get meet and greet passes at the House of Blues in Orlando. We ended up going and seeing them again at Ruth Eckerd Hall because they didn't have tickets on sale for Ruth Eckerd Hall when I got the tickets for the House of Blues in Orlando. So I really loved that band. So got to see them twice for that Operation Mindcrime tour, which was awesome because Pamela Moore was there. Pamela Moore is absolutely wonderful singer. Wonderful singer. Her solo albums are awesome. I recommend them. So I got meet and greets at House of Blues. Well, after the show, me and Michelle, who I was with at the time, we went upstairs and we went with some friends. But it was just me and Michelle that had the meet and greets. So we went upstairs and, gathered around with all the other people that had meet and greet passes. And when the band came out, it was on the upper level. When the band came out, all of them came to us. I got a hug from Pamela Moore. What's better than that? Well, there's stuff better than that, but that was pretty damn good. I actually can say that I got a hug from Pamela Moore. That's a wonderful thing. But the entire band walked up to the group and started shaking hands and mingling and stuff. Well, Jeff Tate came out the door, and there was a table and a couple of chairs right outside the door where they came out of, and he immediately went and sat down. If you wanted to meet Jeff Tate, you had to go. Now, I don't know. I guess maybe he might have had a bad day, or I don't know. People have lives. But he didn't come and meet with us, like the rest of the band did. And unfortunately, DeGarmo was gone. I love Chris DeGarmo's playing. He was just so much feel. I never got to see him with Chris DeGarmo. But sometimes life's not fair. But I shook the hands of everybody in the band, got a hug from Pamela Moore. I had to walk over to the table. Now, not everybody did that. I did. A couple other people did. But most people stayed over in the area, over there, where, where we were hanging out. But I walked over to Geoff Tate. I shook his hand. Told him he's a great singer. I appreciated him. But he just kind of had this attitude. It was like, yeah, the world's shit, and I'm the only one that recognizes it, and I sing really good, and, So, anyway, it was cool to meet Geoff Tate. I appreciate his singing abilities. I think he wrote some great songs. I think he wrote them better when he was working with Chris DeGarmo. I kind of got the feeling that night why Chris left the band. And he's a charter pilot now. He flies planes. That's what Fabian wants to do. Great for Chris. I mean, that's got to be a blast. Bruce Dickinson got his pilot's license and flies the Iron Maiden plane around. That's cool too. And they can incorporate that into, the band. It's a different thing. But I never got that close to Accept. I'm really hoping one day I go get to see them live, because that'll be a wonderful thing. I watched them live this afternoon, Live and Restless. It's on YouTube. Accept, amazing band, amazing new singer. The new singer is way better than Udo. And they tried to get Udo back in the band. I mean, I read this. They tried to get Udo back in the band. But Udo said, okay, I'll come back to the band. Only if, when we break up again, I get to keep the name Accept. Yeah. Ego. Ego is what happens when you think you're better than everybody else. It's what's commonly referred to as a prima donna. A prima donna looks at everybody else like they're stupid. I actually got accused of being a prima donna myself about probably 20, 25 years ago. Now, I didn't even know what a prima donna was until I got accused of being one. So I looked it up. I said, well, gee, that's not something to be. Definitely not something to be. I don't want to be that. So I made a conscious effort not to be a prima donna. I mean, when I found out the definition, I really didn't think I was a prima donna anyway. I guess the guy was just jealous or insecure or something. I don't know. But anyway, I looked it up and made a conscious effort. It kind of went along with my attitude of trying to not be a dick. Because I'm just like that. In any situation I get into, I try to not be a dick. That's easier than trying to be nice. It's a lot easier than to just not be a dick. Oh, prima donna. Ego. Superego. The superego is something that only exceptional people can reach. Now, I don't know if I'm exceptional. I'm still working it out. I know some exceptional people. Tonight, I got to see one. I thought she was up north. I didn't even know she was here. I went out to see the Lint Rollers. There's kind of a music theme going with this thing. I went out to see the Lint Rollers because I haven't seen the Lint Rollers in a while. I got an offer this afternoon that I accepted that's going to be really good for my career, my technical career, my analyst career as a communications man. And I've been excited all day since that call. And I met my people. Well, I'm their people. Whatever. I knew they were going to the Red Star Rock Bar and the Lint Rollers were playing. And I haven't seen Joey and George and Mike, the Lint Rollers, in a while. Talked to them on Facebook, stuff is cool. Oh, and Mike actually got to go and meet Graham Hancock. Graham freaking Hancock. One of the greatest journalists to ever live. And he gets bashed all the time, which isn't fair because all he is a journalist. And the only thing he's trying to convince us of is that people, human beings, are actually smart enough to create the pyramids and all kinds of other monuments on our own. People did it. We were actually capable of being that smart. And People did that stuff, not freaking aliens. And that's all he's trying to tell us. He's just trying to tell us that it wasn't aliens. It was people. People are actually capable of this kind of intelligence. You know, but instead there's people that actually, you know, I mean, you know, there's always hit pieces on Graham. And it's not fair. It's just not right. Because all he's trying to do is convince us that we're smart enough. We can be smart enough to do that shit on our own. We don't need aliens. You know, maybe we need God. But really, you can be that smart even without God. I think. It's my opinion. But that's what Graham's trying to tell us. He's just trying to convince us that we're smart enough to have done that on our own. We didn't need no Nephilim. We didn't need no aliens. We didn't need no UFOs. We did it. Us. I'm one. Yeah, I'm one of us. So anyway, back to the ego. It's a wonderful thing that those two singers, Udo and Jeff, ended up getting run out of their bands because those bands got better. They got better because they got the ego out of the situation. And once the ego got out of the situation, they were capable of exploring their id. And the id's where the magic's at. The id's where you find your humanity. The id's where you find your creativity. But you can't get to the id, even as a group, if there's any ego. Because nobody is better than anybody. I mean, we're not entirely equal. Spiritually, though, and this is where I think Freud is right. Spiritually, we actually are all equal. Our spirits are all the same. Our intellects are not equal. The capability is not equal. Oh, I've totally lost my spot. I got to mention Jennifer Finley. Okay? I thought Jennifer Finley was up north, and I didn't expect to see her at the Red Star Rock Bar. And I walk in, and I'm shaking hands and giving hugs and receiving hugs from people I haven't seen in a while, which was very nice, very wonderful, loads of joy. And I hear, Dave? And it's Jennifer. I thought she was up north. I love this girl. She's the cutest girl I know. And I said that before. I just remembered it before I set this video up. But yeah, she's the cutest girl I know. And it was a joy to see her and to get a hug. That was something I did not expect tonight. And I'd like to think that I enjoy things like running into Jennifer and then seeing my friends Scott, Yvonne, Joey, George, Mike, and others as well, Walt. Because I don't have an ego. I try to keep my ego in check. That's part of me trying to not be a dick. Because I read Freud 35 years ago when I was a young man. Apparently I retained some of it, but, you know, I kind of read him because everybody said he was a quack. I'm like, I like the crazy people. The crazy people are the ones, crazy people are the people they call crazy anyway, because they're not crazy at all. Most crazy people aren't crazy at all. And I think I said something about crazy before in another one of these things. I'm trying to keep this short because I'm tired. And I'm sweating. I don't want to turn the air on because I really just don't want to deal with the noise. I don't want to have to put my tablet in a box with a blanket again. I mean, I'm going to end up doing that anyway, but I've been thinking about this whole ego and id and superego and Freud all day, you know, and it's been since I watched that Accept video, that concert video, Live and Restless. Accept it. Yeah, that's a good word, Accept. I like that word. Great name for the band. They never changed it. I'm glad they didn't let Udo take it. Because they're a great band. They're better than they ever been. And Wolf Hoffman finally, his labor of love for the last 15 years, I think he said, was to do an album called Headbangers Symphony. And he covers symphonic music, a lot of classics on his guitar. He's an amazing guitar player. I mean, I always knew that, but listening to Headbangers Symphony, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Because I like symphony music too. I've listened to a lot of symphonies. I used to listen to symphonies when I was working, when I was installing phone switches. When I knew I was going to be stuck in that room for a while, I would put on a good symphony. Yeah, Brahms, Mahler, Dvorak, Wagner. Oh my God. Beethoven, Bach. Wonderful music, great stuff, and great to work to, especially if you're doing technical work and you're screwing a lot of screws and hitting, just doing all kinds of stuff like that. And then doing the programming. Programming is really cool, listening to symphony music too. I don't think any of those guys had egos. I don't think they could have been as creative as they were, because music is one of those things you got to accept from the universe. It's the music is already there. It's already there. It's just waiting to be had. And I guess if you're lucky to be born with an ear and you can sing or you can play, I mean, that's a good thing, but it's a dangerous thing as well, because it can lead you to your own ego. It can make you egotistical, make you a prima donna, make you think that you're better than everybody else, which isn't fair to everybody else. I mean, even if you are better than everybody else, it's not fair to treat other people that way. And I like fairness. I mean, that's where the truth lies. That's where the love lies. In fairness. Fairness is attainable when you're able to connect your mind with your heart, which means you're not entirely emotional and you're not entirely logical. In the world today, I think we have too many emotional people. We've actually been conditioned by the mainstream media, the politicians, by the school system to be nothing but emotional. Powers of logic, powers of thinking, powers of comprehension, out the window, gone. Because they've been conditioned out of people. So people actually believe the mainstream media. They trust the government. I haven't trusted the government in a long time. Because politicians, they have egos. It's egos that drive them to the job. It's egos that make them strive for power. I'm trying to share a little philosophy here. You know what? I'm going to throw this in here now because there's three great philosophers that always come to mind. And I call it the three wills. There's three wills. Aristotle gave us the will to power. Sigmund Freud gave us the will to pleasure. Viktor Frankl gave us the will to meaning. So we have power, pleasure, and meaning. Now, not everybody's driven the same way. Some people are driven by a will to power. Some people are driven by a will to pleasure. I think this is most people. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have so many drunks, alcoholics, drug addicts, slaves. People that let other things take control of them, which is sad. Because most of them, the day they start thinking, it's the same day that they can break their chains. The chains of addiction. So the will to pleasure is actually kind of a dangerous thing. Because the will to pleasure can lead you down a very dark road if you're not careful. Because self-restraint is another thing that a lot of people don't have. Now, The Will to Meaning is my favorite, my absolute favorite. And if you ever get a chance, you should read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. In like the 6th printing, it's been reprinted over and over and over and over and over again. Very popular book, Man's Search for Meaning. Well, Viktor Frankl did the preface himself in the 5th or the 6th edition. And he expressed his sadness because the book was so popular. And he was doing the foreword of like the 5th or 6th edition. It had already been reprinted several times before they asked him and invited him to actually do the foreword. And his main thought in the foreword, his own foreword, was that it made him sad that the book was so popular because it indicated that there were so many people out there that were trying to find meaning in their life, trying to make their life mean something. Which I actually like that. I like that book is popular. Because there's people that work jobs. They work volunteer jobs. They're the happiest people in the world. They don't get paid a freaking dime. And I've met neurosurgeons, a couple of them, when I ran a diaper route. I ran a diaper route for 2 years for Diety Service. I delivered diapers to people that had babies. It was really cool because I met a really good cross-section of people and careers. A couple of my customers were neurosurgeons. I mean, you should have seen their beautiful homes. But I actually got to meet them because I was there every week for 2 years. Once a week. And I got to run into them sometimes. Most of the time I just ran into the mom. But other times I ran into the guy. And I ask a lot of questions. That's kind of a problem of mine. I ask people questions. I mean, I've been accused of talking too much sometimes, but lately I've begun to defend myself a little bit because I wouldn't have shit to say if I didn't listen, if I didn't ask questions, if I didn't think. So, I guess I'm trying to get my talking too much out here. But I met neurosurgeons making 6 figures a year. They're absolutely miserable. I met a priest. I'm not sure he was a priest. He was a minister. I'm not sure what the church was. But I actually talked to him. And he told me he was actually at a church where he made $65,000 a year. Now this was, more than 20 years ago. Probably closer to 30, 35 years ago, maybe. I don't know, 56 to do the math. Yeah, I'm not going to do the math right now. Anyway, it's a long time ago. It was before I ever did phone work, before I ever even worked at Radio Shack. But this minister told me that he was working in a church. He had a church that he was a pastor of, and he was making $65,000 a year, which was actually a lot of money at that time. A lot of money. He was doing real well. Lived in a nice house and everything. Well, when I met him, he was in a church as a pastor, and he only made $10,000 a year. Now I made $13,000. Yeah, my best year at Radio Shack, I did $13,000, and I was in the top 15% of salespeople in the district out of 94 salesmen. And my best year at Radio Shack was $13,000. This was a pastor who's making $10,000. Told me about the $65,000 a year church he worked in, and he told me he was absolutely miserable. But this $10,000 church he was working in, he loved it. He was happy as hell. So it's not always about money. I guess that's one of the points I'm trying to make. I know I got totally away from the ego and the id and all that other stuff. But when you really look at people, most people want their lives to mean something. And a lot of people have pivoted and become a slave to their conditioning, a slave to society, a slave to the mainstream media, a slave to politicians, a slave to their boss, a slave to their credit card, a slave to their mortgage. And money has made them absolutely miserable. I'd like to go interview some of these politicians that are extremely wealthy and see how many of them are absolutely miserable. But money can be a good thing. I mean, if you have a lot of money, you can give some of it away. You can do good things. You can create associations and build hospitals and take care of people and, share the wealth by choice. I'm totally not for the government imposing taxes and shit to share the wealth. That's not government's job. Government's job is to protect us and make sure that we have the liberty to pursue our own happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what government's supposed to do. They're supposed to allow that. They're supposed to protect our rights to that. They're not supposed to make everybody equal. We're all equal spiritually. We're not equal other ways. Some people try harder than others. People that try harder than others, they deserve more than others. People that are lazy, sit on their ass, that think they deserve a living for doing nothing. That want as much as the guy that busted his ass and did a lot of thinking, did a lot of working, threw shitty diapers over the board in the back of the step van. Well, I don't, and I impose myself in there, and I really shouldn't, because at this point, I'm not talking about myself. I'm not sure what I deserve, which I think is good, because this gets me to another point that I've been thinking about, is doubt. Doubt. Not believing. There's an emphasis on belief in this society. There's an emphasis on what you believe. But the road, the path to intelligence and wise choices, wise decisions, is doubt. When I study something, or when I see a video on YouTube, or I read a book about a certain subject, I immediately go out and find the opposition. And then I read the opposition, or I watch the opposition, the debunkers. And there's debunkers on both sides. Hell, they're debunking all day long. But the whole thing is I can't arrive at my own perception of what the truth is unless I examine all of it. And the reason I examine all of it is because I don't believe shit. I can tell you what I believe in. I believe there's a God. I'm a deist. Not a Christian. Not a Baptist. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not any of those things. I'm a deist. That means I believe in the one God. I've read all those religious books. I actually made myself a self-taught student of comparative religion when I was in my early 30s. Before that, I'd actually read every self-help book known to man or God, because I started out this life as mostly a salesman. And it's good for a salesman to read self-help books, which is actually, I'm not sure, but I think self-help is actually an oxymoron. I mean, nowadays they call them motivational speakers and motivational books, and to help you be self-motivated. Well, why do they have to put self on there? Why can't you just be motivated? Why can't you just get help or help others? Why you got to add the self in there? I think we live in a world of words. We live in a world of words, and words are a very powerful thing. Some words have come up lately. I mean, I don't like the word transparent when in reference to a politician, because that actually means that you can see through them. That means you see nothing. I'd rather use the word obtuse or opaque, and that way I can see them. I can see what they're about on the surface, not transparent. Wrong words play with your head, play with your subconscious, make you think things that aren't really real, because they're misconceptions, disinformation. misinformation that's flooded into your subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind, I believe, is the seat of the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious is a concept that was brought about and published and written about by Carl Jung, who also gave us the archetypes. The collective unconscious, Carl Jung believed, was how we were all connected. The collective unconscious is basically what Einstein claimed where he got the theory of relativity from. E equals mc squared. He claimed to not be a genius, and it wasn't just his idea. He said the idea came from the collective unconscious, and if he hadn't figured it out, somebody else would have figured it out. But it was supposed to be known to mankind. It's still called a theory, by the way. But the collective unconscious is all of us together. And that's why we have to work together. We have to love each other. We have to care about each other. And I'm not saying you got to go to extremes. I mean, sometimes all you can do is think about those other people. And imagine yourself being those other people. I grew up in a household, and we had a poster on the wall that was in a frame that my mom hung up there. And it said, "Oh, Great Spirit." Now, I've seen this paraphrased in a lot of different ways. But on our wall, it said, "Oh, Great Spirit, please grant me the wisdom not to criticize my brother until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." So, to all those people that want to criticize from their plush office chair in front of their computer or from their easy chair with their cell phone or their tablet, that want to criticize and tell me if that I got to put up or shut up, that aren't doing anything, they can bite me. Because they're not even thinking about other people. They're doing nothing. They're only exercising their own emotions. They're being egotistical. They're letting that ego win. And the reason they let that ego win is because they've accepted their own slavery. Wage and debt slavery. They live with it every day. And they've just accepted it. I can't remember who said it, but they said the worst kind of slave is the one that don't know they're a slave. That's sad. When you're a slave and you don't know it. And that makes you not think. Because as soon as you accept your slavery, your thinking process are gone. There's no thoughts. And if there's no thoughts, then it's relatively impossible for you to even consider and think about other people. Because you're a slave to your own emotions. You're a slave to what you see. The mainstream media, the politicians, your boss, religious books, whatever. You're actually doing your own mind control because you've decided that that's easy. That's the easy route. Because it's hard. It's hard to think. It's hard to think because what you run into when you actually do think and you let your logical processes flow inside your own mind and then combine those with the emotions that you find inside your own heart, you run into shit. You run into sadness. You run into pain. You run into aggravation. But you also run into joy. You run into good. You run into gratification. You run into accomplishment. Because once you start thinking, you can't stop. Only a person can liberate themselves. There's no way that other people can liberate other people. It can't be done. The whole sense of liberation is when you violate your own ego. When you crush it. You cease to become a slave when you recognize it. When you know you're a slave. Now, even if you can't do anything about it, your mindset is prepared for whatever can come at you. Because you're thinking now. You're considering the options. You're considering the alternative. You are having doubts. It's doubts that form intelligence. Because it's doubts that lead you down the road of introspection and inspection. And that's how you find your own truth. Because my truth is not necessarily your truth. Everybody has their own truth. But you'll never find it if you exercise your ego. You have to find the id. And the superego is really so small part of it that I can't really even remember what Freud actually said it was. But the id is where the creativity is. The id is where the manufacture is. The id is where thought patterns and thought processes are. That's where the exploration and the journey are. And life should be a journey. It should be a journey. If you look back at the last 5 years of your life and you can't find but one or two things that were interesting enough to remember, then you're doing it wrong. You got to think. You got to consider the people around you. You have to care about the people around you. Because that's only fair. That's what's fair. We're all in this boat together. But what do you do when people don't think? I was just telling Fabian on the way back from the Red Star Rock Bar that a long time ago I learned about myself, because this whole thing is a product of my own self-analysis, and realizing how screwed up, I am. But I told him a long time ago that I learned, because I used to be very argumentative as a child. I used to be a perfectionist. I used to correct people on their spelling. I used to correct people on their pronunciation. If they didn't say a word right, I told them, "Oh, you're still saying that right." And I was 11 or 12, and I'm like grown-up people, or 35, 40 years old, and I'm telling them how they should say stuff. Like, yeah, okay, kid. But I learned to not be a perfectionist. Somewhere along the line, I think I became an idealist, which is just a watered-down perfectionist. Because I learned to just let people misspell. I learned to not correct them because they said things wrong. It didn't matter. It really didn't. Just the fact that they were talking to me, I appreciated. But I realized early that it was not my job to change people's minds. Nope, not my job. But I did feel in my heart that my job was to maybe provoke a little thought. Maybe say something once in a while that people might take an interest in and go exploring on their own. Because we all learn things on our own. Nobody can take care of you better than yourself. Nobody can liberate you except yourself. Nobody can save you but yourself. And that's what I learned about me. Because that's just how it is. And another thing that came up earlier today, sympathy. It's uncanny. It's uncanny. People that deserve sympathy, that have had it really freaking hard, that have had to deal with bullies, that have had to deal with health problems, and all kinds of adversity. I mean, adversity can come from anywhere. But they actually deserve some sympathy. They don't want it. They don't want it. If you ask them, they'll tell you you can keep it because they don't want it. And then the people that want sympathy, they don't deserve it. Because sympathy is a bad thing. Sympathy is self-destructive. I live with a dude that's actually my brother, my real brother, because my biological brother is out there somewhere. I haven't even talked to him in over 2 years. Fabian is my real brother. His ex-wife said something to me, and I got to state it here. I got to make a point for the record. I just need to document it. Well, I don't know. Maybe all these videos will burn up and nothing will ever come of them. I was friends with both of them in high school. And there's a whole story to be told about what happened. I was supposed to be his best man at his wedding, and I ended up going on a loser, drunk, stoner, pill-taking loserhood and stole my dad's car and went to New Orleans. Maybe one day I'll tell that story. But when I came back, somebody else was best man, and I got to be an usher and anything. Yeah, just a crazy story. But anyway, he was married to Denise for, I believe 42 years? 40 years. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Long time. Really long time. And then they got divorced. Well, he stayed in touch with her. I'm glad they've stayed in touch with each other, because Denise stops by her once in a while and I get a hug from her. And I love Denise. I love Fabian. But she said something to me one day, and she told me that Fabian is the kindest man she's ever known. And I know why she said that. Because Fabian feels sympathy for everybody. And it's very self-destructive for him. I mean, he's a very respectable, admirable man. One of the best men I know. Probably the best man I know. But he still feels sorry for people. He has sympathy. It's in his bones. Me, I prefer empathy. Empathy's harmless and helpful. And it actually requires you to understand by using your imagination to get inside somebody else's head and try to grasp what they're going through, what they're feeling. And I actually literally do feel other people's pain. Which is probably why I was in that dark place after I had to suffer this stuff and keep myself in the house and not want to leave the house and stay in the darkness, because if I went outside, I'd be reminded of all the bullshit that people have to go through. Because it sucks. And I'm glad I'm out in the light now. I'm glad I'm doing these videos. I'm glad I'm not egotistical, because I like to be liked. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. I accept that. And I think I've always been like that. That's the result. That's what happens. It's how I became a person that just doesn't want to be a dick. But anyway, Queensryche and Accept. They kicked out their original singer and they got a better one. And they make better music because there's no ego in the band anymore. In both of them. And the ego is bad. And if you start thinking that you're better than everybody else, and you're critical and you're judgmental, well, I think we should be judgmental. I think there's some people that we actually should run out of our lives because they're a detriment and they bring us down. If it's pretty obvious that somebody's bringing you down, then by all means, run like hell. Because that's what you do with people that bring you down. Because we should be lifting each other up. Saying the right thing. Saying the nice thing. Saying the kind thing. Showing kindness to each other. We don't have to give each other money. We don't have to build houses for each other. We don't have to drive people around. I mean, hell, we don't even have to do anything. We just have to think about them. And understand them. That's it. It's just that easy. So, the ego's a bad thing. The id? is worth chasing. Anyway, that's it. I think I'm going to stop there. I know I probably missed out on some things. Did I say it was a joy to see Jennifer Finley tonight? Oh, that was great. Anyway, y'all have a good night. I love you. See you next time.